Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carrod Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2004 horror action movie titled Blade Trinity. Now, Blade Trinity runs for 1 hour and 42 minutes long. It is directed by David S. Goyer. The script was written by David S. Goyer. It is based off of the superhero Marvel comic series by Marv Wolfman and Gene Conlon. It is produced by Wesley Snipes, Peter Frankfurt, David S. Goyer, and Lynn Harris. It is composed by Ramin Djawadi and the RZA, the cinematography by Gabriel Bierstein, and it was edited by Conrad Smart and Howard E. Smith. And the stars of the movie are Wesley Snipes, Jessica Biel, Ryan Reynolds, Kristofferson, Dominic Purcell, Parker Posey, Natasha Lyonne, Callum Rennie, Triple H, Halli Page, Mark Berry, John Michael Higgins, Patton Oswalt, James Remar, Michael Anthony Rawlins, Christopher Heyerdahl, Scott Heindl, Casey Beddow, Paul Anthony, John Ashker, Eric Bagosian, Ron Selmour, Francoise, Kett, Turton, and Michelle Cook. Now, what did I think of this movie? I have to say that there was a real uproar that happened between the making of Blade 2 and Blade Trinity. And it had something to do with creative control and also some creative differences that occurred on the set, which created the atmosphere into something quite hostile and even borderline toxic. The filmmakers decided that after the success and fan approval of Blade 2, they decided that they were going to make another sequel without really putting any fucking effort into making it a welcoming addition to the series. In fact, it was so bad, it actually killed the franchise. Maybe Wesley Snipes did have something going for this, but they just practically went against his own merits. The action sequences that carried the other two Blade movies were badly done, almost to the point where it felt almost cut and paste. There was nothing coherent about this movie at all. It was all just a collage of scenes put in together to make it look like a badly overdone music video. The vampires depicted into this sequel were badly portrayed. They felt like rejects from a video game, or like I said before, an overly done music video. Based on the Marvel comic character of the same name, Blade, played by Wesley Snipes, is a vampire vigilante anti-hero who walks the streets at night, clad entirely in black, and hunts down evil vampires with his fighting style and slick demeanor, making him one of the coolest characters in the Marvel Universe. I mean, if he was to do everything on his own, which he had done in the first two Blade movies, maybe this movie probably would have been better. But here in Blade Trinity, he has been reduced to a shell of himself than compared to the previous two installments, almost emasculating him to the point where he looks confused and vulnerable, and now has been reduced to a mentor to a duo of vampire hunters simply known as the Night Stalkers, played by Ryan Reynolds and Jessica Biel. No. You see, this doesn't work for me. No. The Blade we know works alone. He doesn't need anyone's help. He doesn't need anyone's assistance. So, as much as we love Ryan Reynolds in comedy movies and movies like Deadpool, he was just not needed here. And Jessica Biel, although she's hot, she also just doesn't seem to have a place in this type of movie either. I could see through Snipes' body language that he was not a very happy performer in this movie, and who can blame him? Most of it was stemmed from the creative differences between he and director David S. Goyer. This caused the making of the movie very hostile and uncomfortable, which led to Snipes being quite distant, and aloof to his fans, even threatening violence against co-star Ryan Reynolds. That's how deeply ingrained he was with the character of Blade. But thanks to David S. Goyer for completely, totally fucking up the last movie, I don't think we were going to expect to see a fourth installment. Snipes looks like he would rather be anywhere than making this movie, as he looks bored, like he just wants to, collect his paycheck and get this movie over with. The rest of the cast don't fare better either. While Ryan Reynolds tries to perk up this rather drab movie with clever quips and catchy one-liners, his fighting skills need some work as they feel badly timed and clunky at times. Oh, don't worry, he would get better in other superhero themed movies too. Even though that movie gotten badly ripped, I still have a special place in my heart for Green Lantern. But it was Deadpool, which is where he started to really shine. But not in this movie. At the time of this movie was made, he was pretty much doing mostly comedy stuff. Well, okay, maybe the next year he would be in that horror movie, the Amityville Horror, but he was still also throwing one-liners in there as well. Okay, it doesn't feel believable that a human like Hannibal King, played by Ryan Reynolds, could defeat a big hulking vampire like Jarko Grimwood, played by Triple H, with dumb luck. But however, it happens. In fact, Triple H as Jarko Grimwood could have been great as the leading vampire, since he kind of had that kind of look towards him. Big, muscly, imposing type of individual like Triple H was back in 2004. I mean, it definitely had more stay power and and it was a more recognizable face than Dominic Purcell. So why didn't they make him the leading vampire? And not to mention that Triple H actually has some pretty decent acting skills. Jessica Biel shows she's overrated in any movie she stars in. Don't matter if you stick her in a romantic comedy or a scary horror, she'll guarantee a bad performance. Though I must say her character as Abigail Whistler is quite deadly with the crossbow and seems to have quite the aim. In fact, if I was to choose between the better of the two Night Stalkers, it would have to be Abigail Whistler. But then again, she was also portrayed as just a petty Nepo baby because, her father was Blade's mentor and probably the only person who Blade could trust. It's just a shame that Blade's mentor and friend Whistler, as I mentioned before, played by Kristofferson, had to have a generic send off by not being killed off by vampires, but by the FBI, who have made Blade public enemy number one instead of the vampires that are roaming around the streets by the hundreds. I mean, what a way to send off one of the more prominent characters in the Blade franchise. Rounding out the other strange casting choices, we have Parker Posey, who steals the vampire spotlight as vampire leader Danica Talos, who's obsessed with bringing reformed vampire Hannibal back to the dark side. Yes, long before he became a Night Stalker, Hannibal himself is a reformed vampire. And to finish off, we have an awkward performance by Natasha Lyonne as a visually impaired. Oh, because we can't say blind, folks. Visually impaired scientist. But her role is mostly played for unintentional laughs. Like as if saying blind was offensive, but using her her disadvantage for cheap laughs. You think that that's not offensive? Just thought I'd let that out of my system, folks. It may seem cliche at this moment, but the blame for this mess, yes, I know, they always say you should never just blame the stars. And yes, I know that a lot of times directors take the blunt for the failures of certain movies, but unfortunately, it has to go squarely to director David S. Goyer himself. Goyer is first and foremost a writer, having successfully written the first two Blade movies. And he should have stuck that way. He should have stayed in that position. But I guess since they were too cheap in hiring another director, they decided, okay, Goyer, your turn to take the helm. So then he decided to step out of the shadows and into the spotlight to direct this third installment, which was not a good idea. Just because you're a good writer does not always mean you're a good director. His script may have had style, but it surely lacked substance. I'll cut him some slack that it was only his second movie he directed. His first was another unsuccessful trash bag of a movie called Zigzag, and it showed he needed more experience, especially if he was going to compete with Guillermo del Toro, who made Blade 2 the best of the three-part series. And sure, he may have had some shoes to fill. After all, Del Toro, who directed another superhero themed movie with a horror subgenre to it, like Hellboy, which was also proven successful. All Goyer wanted in this movie is to inject in as many fight scenes or chase scenes without serving any kind of purpose as to why these things are happening in the first place. It's all a video game style movie when you think about it. And if you think that the final installment would consider the baddest of the baddest bad boys of all, well, look someplace else. The big baddie in this trilogy is the king of all vampires himself. That's right, Count Dracula himself is the big baddie in there, played by actor Dominic Purcell. But he's not Dracula. He doesn't go by Dracula. No, because that name is so Romanian. So instead of being called Dracula, he's kind of been Americanized and has been reduced to a boring name like Drake. Nothing now to all the Drakes out in the world, don't feel offended. I'm just joking. So all you Drakes out there, don't come after me. Like as if my name Eric is really that exciting either. So Danica joins her vampire cohorts in trying to resurrect Drake from the dead in hopes that he will destroy Blade and populate the world with vampires. Danica frames Blade for killing civilians and becoming an enemy to the law enforcement as well as the vampire community. Once again, we ask ourselves why? Because it neither helps or hinders their cause. And usually a villain of an ilk like Dracula or Drake, we would expect something a little more charismatic, something a little more flamboyant, something a little more deeply disturbing about him. For a vampire or a villain to work, you have to give this villain character a certain level of charm, a certain level of charisma, a certain level of reasons why we loathe the guy or why we show some levels of sympathy as to the motivation to why they are the way they are. But Drake is a pretty bland villain, being that he is neither charismatic or really all that threatening as a character. It's another one of those type of movies where the henchmen seem to be the ones to carry the load while the villain takes most of the credit. That's how I kind of feel about this movie. So in the end, this movie is just a barrage of fucking awkward fight scenes thrown in with a thin, illogical story and endless sarcastic quips from Ryan Reynolds. It's pretty clear that this franchise has pretty much bit the dust after this one. So after the failure of this movie, I doubt that there will be another installment to this franchise. Although, not too long ago, they had a reboot. And I don't think that one also came out very good. Pretty much, the the Blade movie has just pretty much bit the dust, as far as I can tell. And I don't think it's really on to any kind of path of any kind of recovery. So, when all is said and done, if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would give Blade Trinity from 2004 a 4 out of 10. So, I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead, but just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I'll be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Carrot Rider saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.